بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد. أخي محمد, السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
How are you today? Good?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. As we were saying to the Shabab, inshallah, we want to aim to deliver a conversation, podcast type session today, inshallah. And the aim is to wrap up the theme, which was love, desires, and marriage, inshallah. And a very important theme, as you know.
Yeah.
And we've brought you in, inshallah, so you can share your insight and your expertise in the field. And, working daily with cases and seeing the issues and seeing what works and what doesn't work. So, inshallah, we can learn a few things today. Tell us a bit about yourself, Akhi.
Where do I start? What do you want to know?
Tell us about your involvement, inshallah, with MIA, first and foremost. And tell us, inshallah, about your career.
Okay.
And a bit about what you do on a daily basis, inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد. It's beautiful to see everyone, these young faces here in front of me in the masjid. Wallahi, this is a sign that there is good and khair in the ummah. Seeing the shabab here with bright faces lighting up the masjid. So my involvement here in MIA, so I am one of the founders. 2012, I don't want to bore you guys with our story. I know me and Sheikh Abu Adnan can bore people with this story, but it's very dear to us. So 2012, we established a little markaz or masjid out in Memorial Avenue in Liverpool. And then we worked our way up to buying this building. Alhamdulillah, we moved through a few places. And here we are, fast track, here we are. So, co-founder, manager, whatever you want to call it. Alhamdulillah. I'm a servant to all of you guys, wallahi, yani. As we get older, we let go of some reins, as they say, and now the shabab have the reins, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Do you want to tell us a bit, inshallah, about your involvement in counselling?
Counselling? So,
yes.
You want to know how I got there, or what do I do?
Maybe we can get straight into it.
Straight into it?
Inshallah, about what you do, maybe on a day-to-day basis, what you see,
okay.
inshallah. Just a general type of introduction, and then we'll get into some more detail,
inshallah. So, counselling, I work with mainly couples, marriages, and with youth, shabab, like yourself. But not limited to that as well, but they're the main clientele. I help couples navigate through their difficulties, their challenges. I help them decide, usually they come to me when it's too late.
Yeah.
So I really help them decide whether they want to try salvaging the relationship or really make that decision. So I help them assess I help them through it. I don't make those decisions for them. And with the youth, mainly, shabab from all walks of life. Some from the troubled part, those who are unfortunately inflicted or with the disease of drugs and alcohol, and that haram lifestyle. That's not good for us. And all the way to the other side of the spectrum, which is people who are not from that walk of life, smart people, educated people from good families,
yes, but
still struggle with certain interpersonal or personal issues.
Yeah, subhanAllah. So it's pretty,
it's pretty broad.
It's pretty broad. Yeah. So no one is really immune to it.
La wallah. Even counsellors aren't immune to it.
Alhamdulillah. Subhanallah. Look, the shabab, throughout the series, they of course now understand what marriage is at a very basic level. But let's share with them, inshallah, today an insight as to why marriage is important. In your opinion, from what you see, and you can give us a personal touch, inshallah. Why do you think marriage is important? What's the big deal? Some shabab will think, marriage is a financial burden. It's, a second person that I need to basically be responsible for, and the rest. So why is it really that important?
Okay, that's a very, very good question. And there's many angles we could tackle this from. I would like to ask the crowd something in order to answer this question.
Yeah, inshallah. No, go for it, inshallah.
What's our purpose in life, shabab? What's our purpose in life? Tabarakallah. What's your answer? Very good. And what's the evidence for that? Excellent, very good. So our purpose in life is to worship Allah. And part of worshiping Allah is to obey His laws and is to please Him and is to gain as much or accumulate as much rewards as we could while we're alive. So that way on the Day of Judgment our scales can be heavy, right? So the first reason I would say is that marriage is ordained by Allah Azza wa Jal. It is one of His laws, what we call the Qawniya laws, right? The Sunnah of Allah that are ongoing throughout humanity.
Yes.
Meaning, يعني Allah Azza wa Jal does say, وَمِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَا زَوْجَيْنِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ. So this verse means from everything we created it in pairs. And from those pairs, it's for reproduction. So humankind can continue. So, I mean, if I was to say the first reason why it's important is so human beings can reproduce. And also the act of worship part is that we know from a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, many hadith, he mentions that everything in this world is futile and a waste of time, except for 4 things. And the 3 things he mentions are related to the great act of worship, jihad. The first one is someone who prepares the horses, someone who practices archery. And the third one is one who practices swimming. And the fourth one is spending time with your wife. Aha. Just out of nowhere, right? Like jihad and then spend time with your wife. Maybe there's a correlation there with jihad and spending time with your wife. I don't know.
It might be just as hard.
Yeah, just as hard. It's a struggle. Well, it is. The ulama actually say that the link between this, why it's placed here, it's because there's an ongoing commitment.
Yes.
It's a struggle. It is a struggle. It is a commitment. So, and there's another hadith, there's many other hadiths. There's another one that mentions that, one of the Sahaba came up to the Prophet ﷺ, he was complaining. He said that the rich people have beaten us. They're beating us to Jannah. They pray like us, they fast like us, they do everything like us, but because they're richer, they give more sadaqah. And we're left behind. So the Prophet ﷺ said, he was reframing their thinking that sadaqah is not only with money. He said that tasbih is sadaqah, tahleel is sadaqah, saying subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. These are all sadaqah. So if you say that more than the person that's giving money, you can still catch up to them.
Subhanallah.
Right? Then he said, after all this, he said, and intimacy with your wife is sadaqah. So, to fulfill this purpose of our life, purpose of our existence, we also get rewards on a continuous basis. You being married, right? You're actually getting rewards all the time, as long as you're not falling into any dhulm or any major sins with your wife, oppression, wrongdoing. Then your marriage can be an ongoing good deeds.
And it comes back to the intention as well. If the intention of getting married is righteous, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward us accordingly.
That's correct, yeah.
But if the intention is, is a matter which isn't really too righteous, and some people may get married just temporarily to fulfill their desires, which isn't really the long-term intention or the purpose.
That's
as
correct.
The Prophet ﷺ showed us. So also comes back to that as well.
That's true, yeah. And the Sahaba were amazed, they're like, Rasulullah, do we get rewards for sleeping with our wives? You know what I mean? It was like, what the hell? I know there's kids here, right?
Yes.
And he's like, well, wouldn't he get sins if he was to do it in the haram, fulfill his desire in the haram? And they said yes.
Sahih.
So he said, likewise, he will get rewards every time he does that. And it's not limited to just intimacy. Every time you're married and you're doing halal, you're refraining from the haram, you're getting rewards.
SubhanAllah.
Allahu Akbar. If your intention is correct.
SubhanAllah.
So, ya ma'ashar al-shabab,
Alhamdulillah. Then look, let's move on, inshallah. Since we spoke about the importance, let's talk very simply, and in simple terms for the shabab. A lot of the shabab are at the age where they're not basically ready for marriage. They're still in school. Some of them are moving to university. But it's good for them to know what the difference between a haram relationship is and a halal relationship. A lot of times, the youth, especially the Muslim youth, they get caught into the traditions of the West and they don't really know any better. So if we can highlight for the shabab the difference between a halal relationship and a haram relationship,
Yeah.
I think that would benefit them as well, inshallah.
Okay, so we can look at it from different lenses, spiritual and actual physical as well. So from a spiritual lens, the difference between a halal relationship and a haram relationship is that the halal relationship, you are obeying Allah's commands, obviously, and you are fulfilling your desires in the way Allah Azza wa Jal commanded. So Allah created us, and He created us with desires. He created us with these needs, and He didn't leave us like that. He said, you can fulfill your desires, you can fulfill your needs, but this is the way to do that. This is the way I want you to do it, right? So the first point here from the spiritual lens is that you are obeying Allah Azza wa Jal by putting obeying Him over obeying your nafs. And this is a great, great sin, obeying your nafs. Who knows that verse about those who obey their nafs? Allah.
Many حفاظ out there. يلا.
أرأيت الذي اتخذ إلهه هواه. Right? Have you not seen those who take their Lord, their God, or take their desire as their gods? Allah described obeying your desires equal with a deity, a God. So this is one of the main differences, that you're putting your obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal above your own desires. The other thing is, you're not in a haram relationship. There's no commitment. Anyone can walk away. You know, there's terms like ghosting these days. I don't know if the youth are familiar with that.
Of course they are.
Yeah. There's no real commitment. Yani, I hear it all the time as a counselor. I hear all this stuff where they put all their eggs in one basket, thinking that it's going to work. It's a haram relationship, but then they get ghosted. You know, so there's no real commitment. You can't go call your dad or jadda or whatever and come and say, you know, he's ghosted me. They're like, what are you doing with them anyway in the first place? So halal marriage is not just marriage. You're not just like you're not just unifying two people. You're unifying two tribes or two families, two generations. You know, and here comes commitment. You know, first under Allah Azza wa Jal's sight, you're pretty much making an oath, or you're making taking a strong contract under Allah Azza wa Jal, then under witnesses. And that's one of the shurut of the nikah. One of the conditions of getting married is that there's witnesses and a wali. Why? To make sure you live up to this amana. Right? Because as human beings, we sometimes can become sloppy. Sometimes knowing that, you know, her dad or my dad or her brothers or the sheikh or someone is going to come like this. I mean, it shouldn't reach to that level, inshallah, but there's, the community know about it, the families know about it, the families get together. So that's another big difference between the two. Can you think of any more? Anyone can think of any more difference between halal and haram relationships?
It comes down to the purpose as well. As you said, the purpose and the intention as well. Most of the time, the haram relationship, when it starts off, it's never about getting married. It's always just about having that, person that they think they love, being around them, and the rest. So it
makes them feel good, right?
Yeah, it's not really about marriage at the start. So there's key indicators really when you think, I'm just talking to her. You're actually confessing to yourself that this is haram. So when you're doing it the right way and you're visiting her when she's present with her mahram, you get the halal vibe. This is the haram relationship where it's just it's whatever you want, and then you think that you're safe and the rest. So it also comes back to the nafs. Like the nafs can also sense when the relationship is haram.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it knows it's doing something wrong.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Subhanallah.
Let's talk a bit about the perception and the you can say the main factors that affect how we think in the modern time. Let's talk about social media, and let's talk about how social media affects our understanding of marriage.
Yeah.
And from your experience, when you see something go wrong, for example, how big is the role of social media? Yeah.
Well, the number one, maybe number one, number two, maybe, but one of the biggest reasons why couples come and see me, or when they come and see me, and the first complaint they say is my husband or my wife is on the phone for hours on end. For hours on end.
SubhanAllah.
You know, on the phone, laughing, serious, smiling, bored.
He's practically married a second
Married
wife.
to the phone, right? It's one of the biggest complaints. So it has impacted, or it has, I mean, it's definitely impacted marriages in the Muslim community and in the non-Muslim community. As for social media, it does create this whole, negative comparison thing where people upload the best versions of themselves online, right?
Yeah,
No one wakes up, I mean, no one puts online the worst version of themselves. Sah? Does everyone agree with that? They're going to put things that are good, things that are going well, and especially when it comes to married couples. Actually, research shows couples who post, like all this positivity type stuff about their marriage, and photos of them together, and we are so happy. Research actually shows that they are the most miserable. SubhanAllah, but they're trying to put up this mask, this appearance, this image that we are happy. Why? Because it's all about comparing. So when you're on social media and you see, for example, Abdullah and his wife, and they're out at the beach, mashallah, he's got her a flower, right? What does your wife do? Ya Fulan, why can't you be like, her husband? Look how beautiful they are. And he's like, Wallahi, last week I took you here, and what's wrong?
SubhanAllah.
So it causes this negative comparisons, whether consciously or unconsciously. It's there. If you keep on seeing it, it's there. So
Ajib, it's negativity breeding negativity.
Ya Allah.
And it just keeps going.
It is. And also social media, very dangerous tool as well. I'm not here saying halal, haram, or has some benefits. I mean, I'm on social media, but you need to control it, just like you need to control everything, right? Social media is always a platform also that I hear all the time in my office for cheating, betrayal, affairs, sexual affairs, emotional affairs, and the list goes on and on. It starts off with that social media. You know what I'm saying? So, ittaqillah azza wa jal with social media.
SubhanAllah.
Ask your potential spouses, can I please see, before you marry them, can I see your social media? It's a joke. Maybe do, I don't know.
Inshallah, she doesn't have social media.
Even better.
Alhamdulillah. Let's get to a really specific question. I know that some of the shabab sometimes get influenced by this topic, due to their cultural backgrounds and whatnot. What do you think about arranged marriage and the stigma of arranged marriage? And do you think that someone needs to fall in love before they marry a significant other? Or, you could tie it back to arranged marriage. Are you for or against it? And
so two-part question. We'll start with the first one, arranged marriages. So where do we start? So let's go all the way back to the days of the Prophet ﷺ. So in the days of Jahiliyyah, the days before the Prophet's prophethood, women were pretty much objects that were owned by their dads and then passed on through inheritance to their husbands and so forth. So that they were objects, right? They wouldn't inherit, they couldn't work, they couldn't move, they couldn't breathe. They were slaves. Pretty much they were slaves that were owned.
Couldn't leave the house.
No?
Couldn't leave the house.
Couldn't leave the house. They couldn't do anything. They were nothing. They were subhumans, literally, in Jahiliyyah. So Islam came and liberated that, right? Way before feminism, the first wave of feminism, right? Islam came and said you can own property, you can work, you can this. There's shurut for everything, but it's generally, it's there, right? Unfortunately, some cultures, fast forwarding, some cultures would then, they kept this belief there. If not 100% there, 50% there, right? So the families would actually choose spouses for the couple. Or, I don't know if I said that right. The family would choose who their daughter would marry or who their son would marry, right? Without them even seeing the other side. And this is against the sunnah for many, many reasons. But one, the Prophet ﷺ said to a man who wanted to get married, he came to him and he said, I want to get married. And then he said, did you look at her? And he said, yeah, I did. He said, go back and look more at her. Go back and look at her more. This happened a few times, back and forth. Why? He wants the Sahabi, he wants the man, he wants him to make sure that what you see, you are happy with. Go and ask more. Go and do your homework more, in other words. Go and see her. He said, go and see her. So marrying someone, I'm not saying it's haram or it's invalid. I'm not saying anything like that. But it's against the sunnah. Marrying someone you haven't seen. You know what I mean? Yeah. And many of the ulama, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal stressed the point that before the whole deen and the whole issue of lineage and wealth, make sure you're attracted to her.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you're attracted to her personality, to her physical appearance, and her character, and so forth.
Person you're going to see the most at the end of the day.
But someone you're going to wake up to every single day for the rest of your life. So you want to make sure you're happy with things, right? Yeah. Some cultures kept this tradition of that. Now, it has some benefits, arranged marriages, if it's done the proper way. But why it's got a stigma is because it was done most of the time in a very toxic way or a very bad way or haram way even, right? Without the kids can't see, they choose what's best for them. In other words, and this goes back to the parent being overly controlling with the adult child. The adult is 20, 25, he's a zalm, he's a rijal, and he's got mummy still behind him, and you know he's got daddy still making decisions for him. This is a big issue. You get married like this, your parents, what I say all the time, the control extends through from the parents to the son to the wife. And disaster after that. Or vice versa. The parents, the wife, and the husband. Absolute disaster. You know, part which hopefully we can answer another question about maturity, emotional maturity and stuff.
Yes, definitely.
I'll talk about that later. But anyway, back to this thing here. Some cultures kept that concept. The good way to do it is where the parents know their children. They know that what they want and what they don't want, or the parent should know, right? In a realistic or in an ideal world, the parent is the best one to know what the child wants. Sah?
That's right, yeah.
So from that, they go and they search, right? They do some homework and they go and research and they go and speak to people. And this is something that we've lost today, actually. You know, unfortunately, this is actually a very good trait where the parents and the family members asking other people in the masjid, in the community, in the family.
It's still around. It's still around, but
and it's not that much, right?
It's a bit scarce.
It's a bit scarce, especially for those who were born here with minimal family. But anyway, so they would select and they would give options to the children. Come and see this one. Come and see that one. What do you think about this one? At the end of the day, there's no force, which is haram. Forced marriage. And there's no coercion. If you don't marry him, we're going to be upset. This happens all the time. So these are the technicalities or the difficult, the toxic things that happen with the arranged marriage.
It's like pressure, but they're not forcing.
They tell you we didn't force, but there was. And if you ask the child, the worst thing for the child is to disobey its parents or upset its parents. If you don't marry him, we're going to disown you. You know, and if you don't do this, you're going to disgrace us. And she doesn't love him. He doesn't love her. He doesn't even like the way she looks. But he has to marry her, and he's in my office saying, I don't love my wife, and I have to close my eyes when I'll stop here.
And the parent, actually that scenario could be a bit more deadly because the parents in that scenario, they've thought about it so much that they actually think they're doing nothing wrong. Yeah,
they think they know best for their children. Yeah, so they have good intentions, don't get me wrong.
Like I didn't force him, or I didn't force her. You know, it was up to them. And you know, they're really brainwashed. Like they actually think that this is what I did was right. And
yeah. So on one hand, to conclude this answer about arranged marriage, if it's done in a way where some cultures do it, some cultures do it, where the parents go and select some spouses and they give options to their children and they allow them to choose, this is good. This is halal. This is excellent. It's actually very good, right? Yes. But the condition is consent without any coercion. Actually, marriage without the consent is actually an invalid marriage.
SubhanAllah.
Right? It's one of the conditions as well. So on one hand, it can be toxic if it's done the old traditional cultural way that's un-Islamic. Or it could be good for some cultures. It works for a lot of cultures.
In terms of like consent, you're talking about the spouse agreeing to marry the other spouse without any involvement of the parents.
Yeah, the spouse needs to consent. So if a daughter says no to a man and the dad says no, you have to, and he goes to the shaykh and says, no, yes, that's an invalid marriage. It's a batil marriage.
Yeah, subhanAllah.
For the man, obviously the man needs consent as well, but he doesn't need his wali. He acts he represents himself. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Alhamdulillah. Let's move on then to the other extreme.
No.
you see, we were talking about how Islam came with to liberate the rights of women to an extent with shurut. What about the extreme feminism nowadays, where some part of society thinks we don't need a woman, for example, or our happiness isn't tied to a woman, or it's not tied to marriage?
I've heard this before. You should be happy and fulfill your own needs and love yourself.
Yeah, that's right. And like if you achieve your goals independently, then it's all you, and it's that false hope of like self-fulfillment and all that stuff. If we're gonna sum it up in one way, we can say like men don't need women, for example. If we're gonna sum it up, or like you don't need a woman to be happy in your life. To what extent do you agree or disagree?
These are all loaded questions, Arif, man.
Yeah. No, subhanAllah, we've thought about them. We've thought about these questions. We want to prepare these, shabab, inshallah.
Hey, he's listening, shabab?
Yeah.
He's benefiting?
And inshallah, there'll be, I'll have a question to follow up after you provide some advice.
So, human beings, we're created, we're social beings. The non-Muslims call us social animals. Maybe we are somewhat
to an extent.
Like beasts, right? So we are social beings, meaning that Allah created us in tribes, shu'ub wa qaba'il, lita'arafu, as Allah says in Surah Al-Hujurat. He created us, to socialize and to get to know one another and to mingle. And this is, I think, I don't know how far you want me to go with this, but so we've got the whole individualistic society approach.
Yeah, we'll take that approach.
And then we've got the Islamic or the more communal approach, right? So the individualistic approach is, they say that you don't need anyone to be happy.
Yes.
Right. This is not all of them say this. Actually, a lot of, to be fair, from the literature that I read from the non-Muslims, that they actually say no, this is incorrect and so forth. But a lot of this is pushed on social media.
Yes.
That you don't need anyone in your life, and you don't need a woman, and you need to make yourself happy.
You don't need your parents, like the Western 18, you move out, you pay your own rent.
That's where it all stems from, right? Yeah. But we have needs as human beings. And so on one hand, which I'll get to after, that we need to learn how to obviously have a level of, some healthy levels of self-love, getting your needs met in the halal in a healthy way, and all these types of things. But at the same time, there's some things that you can never meet by yourself. You need the jama'ah, first and foremost. On a social scale, you need the jama'ah, you need the brotherhood for example, for jihad or for government, for governance issues.
Basic level, establishing community.
Yeah, and on a basic level as well, you need it in the masjid. Our whole deen is based on jama'ah, meaning that you need to interact, you need to be with people. Now, on a intimacy level, emotional level, or romantic level, if you want to call it that, there's some things that you need a female for, and the female needs a male for. And it's not just sexual as well. There's emotional intimacy, there's having that attunement with one another, that companionship, reliance that you could only get, I repeat, that you can only get from marriage. So you can get some needs met from your friends, from the masjid, you know what I'm saying? Here and there, you get some of your needs met, but there's a point where you need to get married.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
We have needs and we need to get them fulfilled. On the other hand, I'll mention, there is like a belief or a push out there in our community. I know my Lebo community. Their son is, unfortunately addicted to drugs, heroin, ice. He's in and out of jail. He's unstable. He's doing very bad. He's lost. There's pornography. There's brothels. You name it. Everything under the sun that's haram and problematic and addiction. These are all addictions, right? It's not just like a secret sin. They believe you need to get married.
Yeah.
And marriage will fix you. That is a misconception.
That's the magic dust, huh?
Yeah.
For the livers.
That's a myth, and that's incorrect and very, very, very toxic, that one, right?
Yes.
So, strike that balance.
Yeah.
So don't think that marriage will fix your addictions. Don't think marriage will fix your traumas as well. Anyone know what trauma is here? Put your hand up if you know what trauma is. Play it. Trauma, I don't want to get into too much detail of this whole, mental health issues, but trauma, low self-esteem, depression, so forth, if you don't heal with that or deal with it at least, then you're going to take it into your marriage, and your marriage is going to deal with it, and usually doesn't end well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So don't think that marriage will magically fix your mental health issues. I mean, it would improve your mental health,
Your
definitely.
personal issues, your individual issues.
Yeah, your individual problems.
Yes.
Right? It won't. Right? So does that answer that question?
Yeah, it does. And like, if you actually do get married, there's that extra issue that now you're a burden on someone else.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
actually, that could be worth 50% of your initial issues, and that's
Wallahi.
going to sit right on top of all of them, and it's going to really make it worse. Subhanallah.
How far can I go with this? Or
In terms of like,
examples?
no, you can. We have time for another example. inshallah.
Examples?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So people who think pornography, look, a lot of the youth are addicted to pornography, right? And it's about time that we just actually have these conversations and stop sort of pretending that you don't do it if you do it, and to go and seek help. But anyway, people who are addicted to pornography, I'm talking like fully addicted, 3-4 times a day, masturbation 3-4 times a day, right? Very, very severe. Any opportunity that they can take, they get married thinking that marriage will help them. It doesn't help.
Makes it worse, huh?
They can't stop. They have intimacy with their wife, and then, while she's in the shower, he's on pornography again.
Subhanallah.
The addiction to the screen, the addiction to the dopamine that's coming out with the options that he's got, the variety that he's got, it doesn't stop there. It destroys marriages, because, from what I see, all this energy is going into the pornography, and obviously, masturbation and ejaculation. This stuff drains you, right? You don't have any energy to put into your wife anymore, right? So there's erectile dysfunction, problems in marriage, in young shabab.
And you're seeing this? You're seeing these cases?
These are cases,
Subhanallah.
very regular. Young shabab who should be carrying the buildings on their shoulders and running have erectile dysfunction because of pornography.
Subhanallah.
Okay? You can't just swipe left on your wife and choose another lady. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is what they do with the pornography. Oh, I don't like that. So the brain becomes immune to one genre, right? Try to keep it PG. And that helps them get off. But then after a while, it doesn't work. They have to go to more extreme and more severe, or change the genre. They can't do that with their wives, right? So they're stuck with this miskina, Kamen, who wasn't taught. Is another problem. If I can talk to the sisters one day, they weren't taught how to be romantic and how to be, affectionate with their husbands. And so this man's stuck now in this problem.
Yes.
This wife's stuck in this problem, and they end up with major problems.
Yeah, and the problem probably inflicts onto her as well.
Yeah.
And that's like a lifelong burden.
Yeah. The complaint he'll say is, well, she doesn't dress up for me. You know what I mean? Victim blaming is another topic. But
That's another.
yeah. So I hope that answers your questions. I don't know, what was the question again? Stay away from pornography. Was that it?
No, the question we were talking about being happy in marriage and etc. And then we went to we were speaking
Social media,
about
wasn't it?
being individual, and then we spoke about having individual issues that marriage won't.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. Marriage isn't basically like that special cure that that black seed oil. It's not. It requires a bit more work on your part.
Yeah.
And like what we subhanAllah, throughout the series, what we were telling the shabab is, at the end of the day, if you want ABC from your wife, you need to see it in yourself.
That's a good point.
Yeah, if you're committing, and it works the other way, if you're committing sin A, B, and C, I wouldn't say expect that your wife will commit it, but don't be surprised.
Expect consequences.
That's right, and you can't expect someone to be righteous and perfect when you're the complete opposite.
The Sahaba would say, well, I think it was the Tabi'een, I can't remember, one of those righteous generations, they would say, when my wife would, when we're conflicting a lot and there's problems in my marriage, I would look at what sins I'm doing. I would reflect, so their sins, They understood that their sins had a direct impact and consequence in their marriage. If their horse died while they were traveling, what sin have I done?
SubhanAllah.
You know?
Well, that's a great outlook.
Self-reflection. So, to answer that question, what you do can definitely impact you. So if you want your wife to be righteous, you need to lead by example, right? Or at least abstain from sins.
Yes, that's perfect, inshallah. We got pretty deep with that one. I think it was good. There was a lot of take-home messages, which is good.
Alhamdulillah. Well, look, I think the shabab, I know we're keeping it PG.
Yeah.
We're in a masjid and use it, but let's not kid ourselves. These guys have heard everything more than me and you.
Yeah, of course. But the key is if they can take one or two fawaid away and focus on them, then inshallah they would have benefited them.
Inshallah.
And we'll benefit as well, inshallah. Let's talk a bit about the stages before marriage. Some practical, the practical stage. How important is the girl's family or the spouse's family? How important is the spouse's family, and what should you specifically or generally look for in the spouse's family?
Wow.
Yeah, and of course you can start with the issues that you're seeing, and then you can backtrack, inshallah.
So I believe that family is very important, all right? But I want to be fair to the reverts as well. Yes. Because they come from very hard families. But I'll talk about them later. But family is very important. That's where our childhood, our family history, our homes of childhood really shape who we are as adults. Emotionally, mentally, psychologically, really shapes the way you think. I'll give you an example. If you're in a house where you see a lot of shouting and yelling, for example, Arabs, we shout, right? Yeah. Pass the salt. No, I'm not talking about that shouting. I'm talking about abuse. All right. So if you're in a house where there's abuse and there's breaking walls, and there's violence between the parents and the siblings, physical violence, yep. Emotional abuse. If you're in that type of household and your parent says to you on a regular basis, "You're worthless.
You're rubbish.
You're rubbish."
Doesn't hug you, doesn't kiss you.
There's no hugs. There's no kisses. There's no. Look, you are worthy for being you. I love you. I accept you, just not because of your accomplishments and your grades and all that balut. I accept you for who you are. You for being my son or for being my daughter. There's none of that. Right? So what is there? Put downs. Right. You grow up, most of the times, this is where, because about 80-90% of mental illness is developed from this type of upbringing. Bare minimum, you're going to grow up thinking, I'm unlovable, I'm stupid.
Worthless.
So we call these negative core beliefs that you have unconsciously, right, within you. You don't know you actually have them. You might not say this, but it shows on your behavior. For example,
yes.
If you've been told all your life that you are dumb and stupid, then you will avoid exams, you'll avoid things like this. This is not absolute, by the way. This is just common, general and common.
Yeah.
So the upbringing has a major role. So, was this house of your future wife, was it abusive? Was there assault? Or was there? It doesn't have to be perfect. We all shout and yell and scream and whatever. But was there basic elements of what the child needed, which is love, acceptance, deen, respect, yeah. And so forth.
Yeah.
If the family was like this, then most likely the wife that you're going to marry is going to come out with some good self-esteem. Now, if you marry a wife with low self-esteem, or vice versa, I'm talking to the boys here, if this ever goes live and they think I'm sexist or whatever, I'm talking to boys here. If you marry a wife with low self-esteem, that can cause you a lot of problems. Don't think by your jamal and your nice look and your beard and your muscles that, bro, I'll fix her low self-esteem, man. How can she resist? You know what I mean? No, it's a psychological illness.
Yes.
Someone with low self-esteem, for example, or abandonment issues, for example. And wallahi, it's very, very, very real, this stuff that I'm telling you, right? Very real. If the husband says in an argument, you know what, I'm leaving. Low self-esteem says he's leaving you forever. You see? And then she becomes escalated and so on and so forth. She believes that she's not good enough, so she won't dress up for you. She hides. She's been told she's every
Whatever.
name under the sun, so she's hiding her body in front of her husband. Then the husband's complaining, my wife's not sexy enough, right? So big problems. And also people with low self-esteem have problems with interpersonal, basic communication, right? So I'm not saying look for a perfect family, because there's no such thing as a perfect family, but look into the family who have good interpersonal skills. There's there was respect in the house. Look around, make sure there's no broken walls, you know. Yeah, so respect, deen, minimal abuse, no abuse.
Yeah.
And just, you know, acceptance for the child for who they are, instead of that overly controlling parent.
And maybe maybe also the opposite way around, like how they treat their parents as well.
Yes, of course.
Yani
Yeah,
when you go and
that's
see,
another thing too. Yeah,
when you go and see as well, yani.
Yeah, so the family is very important.
Yes.
Now for the reverts, what do we do there? You know, we say the family is important, but the revert comes from a non-Muslim family. Usually there's alcohol, there's, you know,
Everything under
the sun. Muslims have it too, by the way, but, you know, reverts, their families are non-Muslims. You know, we do say that when you are getting married, you are also, you know, you're marrying the individual, your spouse, but you are somewhat now connected to their family, right? Now you can set boundaries and so forth, so you're not actually really marrying the family, but they are a big part of your life now.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, for the reverts, most of the time from what I see, they know how to set those boundaries. They know that, you know, when there's alcohol out, that, you know, that's something that they don't do, so the parents then generally respect that. So even non-Muslim families can have this respect. I see it all the time. So even if you're marrying a revert, still look into the family. You know what I'm saying? If they have that, you know, ihtiram, like manners and so forth, then that's still a good sign that she was brought up in a healthy way, right?
No, that's good. That's good, inshallah. And like, if we're going to look at the self-esteem issue, let's say a brother or a sister do find that their spouse is lacking in that department, like what would you advise? Just, I know it might, we opened the can of worms, and you know, it's more like counselling, but what would you simply advise?
For someone with low self-esteem?
Yeah, if they, this wasn't really evident during the beginning,
look, we all
and they're pretty much already married.
Yeah.
So what's a few tips on how to work on, and we'll pick on this little example because you brought it up, but generally like minor or major issues.
I'll give a quick tip. I can't go into the detail of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not a counseling session.
Yeah.
But look at the positive you. The positive you. If you've got low self-esteem, look at your positive qualities. You know, write them down every day. Journal them. Ask yourself, you know, what praises have I received from genuine people in my life? From my workers, co-workers, my boss, the people at the masjid. What have they said? And journal that down. You got to undo all the negative voices in your head, that you're dumb, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're worthless, whatever. You got to undo it with the real evidence of what your friends complimented you with, what you did. Like, for example, this is what you do in your journal. You write what you did, and no matter how small or insignificant you may think it is, right? So, for example, I prayed dhuhr. I cleaned my room. Next to praying dhuhr, in your journal, write what character trait that displays. So, it shows obedience to Allah. It shows I am consistent. It shows I follow a timetable, the 5 daily prayers, for example. So you can put these quality traits next to it, and next to doing your bed, I made my bed, cleaned up my room. I am a tidy person. So now you're creating, through evidence and facts, real qualities of who you really are.
Yes.
And now you got to undo all the other stuff and rewire your brain with this stuff. So that's a quick tip.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
So link what you do with a trait, and ask people, what do you think about me? No, I'm joking.
It's actually a very good tip. Like, it's something that I can take away and straight away put into practice, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah, definitely. All right, now I know like a lot of these shabab, they
want spicy topics.
Yeah, no,
man.
I think I think once they hear this question, they're gonna wake up. Subhanallah. How do we all know that we're ready for marriage? What are some indicators? And if we're gonna stem from the question, what are some things we need to work on?
Ooh, yeah. Okay, so who here is ready to get married? Put your hand up. Takbir.
Is it,
How old are you? How old are you? Yeah. Come and see me.
this is
14 years old and he put his hand up. He's ready to get married.
anyone that puts their hand up, it's according to their opinion. If they come ask us, we'll tell them to go back to school or something.
Alhamdulillah. And how old are you, brothers? 18, 17, 18? You're 18 as well, brother?
Now we've got some older brothers. I think Adiyat, yeah, 19, 20, 20, Dharif's almost like 24, I think.
These guys realize that marriage is big.
Yeah. All right, so sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah, we're talking about what should we look out to?
Okay, qualities and traits.
Qualities, when you can say the ideal.
How do I know when I'm ready?
Yeah, the ideal person for marriage. How do you know when
Okay.
I'm ready? All those questions. Yeah.
Okay, so first and foremost, when you know yourself,
Yes.
when you know yourself, you have some healthy levels of what we call emotional intelligence. Okay? There's many signs of knowing when you're ready for marriage, but we'll start with this one, right? Usually there's about five characteristics that they attribute to emotional intelligence. So the first one is self-awareness. Being aware and knowing yourself, knowing your emotions, being able to label your emotions. I am sad, I am happy, I am angry, right? Being able to label them and being able to express it as well, okay? And also being able to see that in other people. You know, when someone's sad, you can see that, you can label that emotion. When someone's happy and so forth. As opposed to when you're emotional, your impulsivity takes over,
Yes.
right? So your emotion is not in par with your reaction. If that's you, don't get married yet. Because why? Marriage is you're gonna be very impulsive and you're gonna be stressed a lot of the time, right? I'm not trying to scare you guys, but it's real. Marriage is real, right? So if your reaction is not in par, it's way far beyond, more extreme than what the actual, the situation was and what the emotion was, then this is what we call an impulsive reaction, and this can be very dangerous. These are the people who say things, like you're divorced, and then they regret it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they might even be abusive as well,
Yeah, like
and then regret it.
We're very picky.
Very picky.
Not enough salt.
Yeah, shout, scream, this, that. So step one, self-awareness. Be aware of your own emotions, be able to label them, and manage them. So self-awareness. The next one is self-regulation. So know that when you the triggers, know what your triggers are. What makes you angry? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? What are your needs? What are you? All these things about regulation, right? And what are your triggers? Like I said, and also how to soothe yourself. So when you are angry, how to calm down a little bit before reacting. So pretty much learning how to respond instead of react. Learning how to respond instead of react is a difference. So this is self-regulation, regulating your own emotions, right? And also that of others as well. Number 3 for emotional intelligence is empathy. And this is a big one. If you don't have empathy, your marriage is going to be very dysfunctional. I repeat, Arif. Asif. I repeat, if you don't have empathy, your marriage will be dysfunctional. Why? Because you're living with another human being, okay? And empathy is having the ability to really put yourself in another person's body or in their shoes. And to try to see things at least, and try to understand things from their viewpoint, right? And try to see things how they see things through their lens and their eyes. If you can't do this, and this is a learned thing as well, it's a learned behavior. If you can't do this, then you need to work on this, okay? low levels of empathy is actually, I'm not diagnosing anyone here or anything, but low levels of empathy is one of the things that psychologists or psychiatrists look at when they're diagnosing disorders, personality disorders, like narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, and all these other mental illnesses. They're all low on empathy. Now, I'm not saying everyone that's low on empathy has a disorder, but it shows how problematic it can be for it.
It can become a disorder if they don't work on it, like if they don't fix
it.
it.
Along with other things as well.
Yeah.
But it can definitely cause you problems. Why? You're not able to see what your wife is saying, how she feels. It's all about, so a person with low empathy is very self-centered and selfish. Me, 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 me. And also very defensive.
Yeah.
You can't get married and live with another human being when it's all about, where you think you're in the center of the universe and your wife is zero. It doesn't work that way. So empathy, the ability to feel what other people are feeling, right, is a major ingredient.
Yes.
Another one is social skills. So how to make friends, how to communicate, how to problem solve. This is so these are all traits of emotional intelligence. You need to work on this emotional intelligence as much as you can before you get married. So when you feel that I have good empathy, I have social skills, I can manage conflict.
I don't overreact.
I can control my anger, and I can I'm self-aware. This is one of the good things, right? The other thing to know if you're ready for marriage is that you know the roles of yourself when you get married that are ordained by Allah Azza wa Jal. You know what your responsibility is when you get married. If you know them and you are pretty certain that you can fulfill them, that's another sign that you're ready for marriage, right? So when you are able to fulfill your responsibilities and your wife's rights, okay? And also knowing what your rights are as well, so that way your wife can also fulfill your rights and responsibilities. Also knowing what you're exactly looking for in a wife. Have a category. Don't be too picky, but have something that you want, right?
Almost like criteria, like a checklist almost.
Yeah, have a criteria, whether it's a culture background, educational background, religious background. Have some criteria before you enter. Don't go in blind like this, okay? The other thing you should look for, in a wife, when you know you're ready to get married, is when your sins are minimal. Major sins, okay? Because like we said before, you can't carry that over into your marriage. You'll cause a disaster. So these are some signs, I think that are comprehensive.
And like
that's how you know when you're ready to get married, right?
And like, how should the brothers really work on that? Can they work on that with their friends? Can they work on it at home with family? Or is it something that they're almost alone with?
No, you are not alone. I mean, obviously at home it's hard to to work on these types of things. I mean, you can to some degree, but read books, attend workshops, attend courses, journal your feelings a lot, like read self-help books, mental health books, leadership books as well, because being a husband, you are actually a leader. And a leader, by the way, a leader without emotional intelligence, you don't want to be around him. I'll give you an example. Imagine a boss. Right, that shouts and screams at you, has no empathy, has no all that stuff. Would you want to stay with him? You wouldn't. What about a boss, a leader, who has all those things that I mentioned? You'd stay with him, right? So you need to have all these things. But you're not alone. You should go and seek help and so on and so forth.
Inshallah. I think we'll cut it a little bit short, inshallah, for Salah.
No.
I believe we will be able to come back after Salah. We'll just stop for now, inshallah. We'll make adhan and pray, and then we'll see you guys back here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't be too long, inshallah. Yeah. There's a couple more questions that we'll converse about, and then maybe we'll get some questions from the audience.
Yeah, I want them to interact.
Yeah, and then, or maybe we'll go straight to the questions from the audience, and then we should wrap it up, inshallah, after Salah.
inshallah.
You guys can go make wudu and get ready, inshallah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. So this is, inshallah, for the viewers that are on the recording, this is the second part, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, we've just prayed Maghrib. And I'm going to ask, inshallah, one question to you, brother. But before I ask that, for the attendees and the listeners, we're going to be giving you guys a chance, inshallah, to ask some questions. We want to hear a bit from you, inshallah, so that we can, maybe make the advice a bit more targeted, inshallah. Just before I get to that, we were speaking about how to improve ourselves, how to be better individuals before we, invest in a shared relationship like becoming married. If there's a brother that's still young, okay, maybe 16, 17, 18, and he believes that he has or he possesses all these qualities, and mashallah, in the masjid, and his personality, and he thinks is the best, and he possesses empathy and emotional intelligence. What's your advice for a brother or a sister in that case, that believes that they possess all these qualities?
Or believe that they're ready for marriage, you mean?
Yeah, like they're ready, but at the same time they're still 16, 17, not so much 18, 19, they're still a bit tender. What would you tell them? What should they do? What's the kind of next steps for them, inshallah?
All right, so 16-year-olds, I believe, is still, although their desires are active and stuff like that, I believe it's still young, only because they haven't developed, emotionally properly yet, and also even their brains haven't fully developed at that age.
Yeah.
Actually, they say your brain fully develops at what age? 24, 25?
Psychologist?
Who's a psychologist here?
Yeah, Tarif. 26?
I've read 24, right? So 24, according to doctors and scientists and stuff, that's when your brain fully develops. And the last part to develop is the decision-making part, right? So, and that's why after 24, 25, you look back and think, I know from me, right?
What about this Evo?
Yeah. You're very impulsive, that's why, before 24. So for a 16-year-old to get married, I believe it's too young. Yes. However, if someone's 18, look, I got married at 19. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite,
Special case.
I was a dad at 20. My son now is 20.
Oh, alhamdulillah.
So what you do is you bring this to your parents, right? You say, I want to get married, or I'm interested in getting married. Go to your parents, and I know there's no dads here, but I advise the parents here to be accommodating and not somewhat invalidating and dismissive, right? Because 18, it can be done. I don't highly recommend it, but if the person's putting his hand up and his desires are, overcoming him, and it's really something that's on his mind, and he's ready, financially ready. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man istata'a minkum al-ba'a falyatazawwaj." Yes. The istita'a, obviously, it's financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, all the stuff we mentioned. So if this youth, this 18, 19-year-old thinks he's ready, I tell the parents to don't dismiss him, and accommodate for him, and help him. Put a plan for him. At least, okay, let's go searching, because you could search for 6, 7 months, 1 year, 2 years. Really, it takes a long time, right? Let him go door knocking, go with him. He might feel awkward, but let him see the reality of it.
See how it is, really.
See how it is.
Yeah.
And also, for this youth, I would suggest that before you even do this, also live about a year independent from your parents. Don't leave their homes. Don't go say, Muhammad said, I'm going to run away. I'm not saying that. I'm saying while you're living with your parents, be independent. Make sure for a whole year straight, you do your own bed, do some of your laundry, cook some of your own meals, right? Tidy up after yourself, do some maintenance around the house, even pay some bills that you're responsible for your stay there, like board. So what do they call it? Board pay or something.
Board pay?
I don't know what they call it.
Is it like in the...
Yani you're paying rent to your parents, sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I'm not too sure what the term is, but yeah.
I heard it
Like
was-
a share basically.
المهم, so that way you can feel what responsibility really is. Because once you get married, and now everything's on your phone, notifications of this rent and that bill and this is due and that's due, this ding 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 ding. So before it was inboxes and DMs, right? But now it's now it's the bank and and the gas company. You know what I'm saying? So live a year of being independent from your parents, in your parents' home, right? You need to detach for a while, be independent, so that way you can feel it, and that way the transition in is not a shock for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty accurate, yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, that's the very rare scenario, and you're not everyone in this room that's 17 go and convince yourself that you're ready. This is very...
Yeah, look, it's very 17-year-olds. I believe, like I said, it's still too young.
Yeah.
Wait it out, fast.
You need to really have a good think about it, like,
Yeah.
and if it's the best thing for you.
Sahih.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of factors to look at as well. You know, we know Islamically speaking, if you can't control your desires and you're like about to fall into zina, or you are falling into zina, and you know this has become a problem for you, like you know it's just overcome you, then you've got to probably start looking into it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But take the advice of the Prophet ﷺ,
Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
fast, you know, as much as you can. And some people tell me, brother, man, I fast, but I'm still, I still got desires that are very strong.
On fire still.
What's going on, man?
Yeah.
And it's true, you know, it's like an aphrodisiac fasting sometimes. But the problem is, there's still a problem. You, after assessment and looking,
Yeah.
you see that most of the times we fast, our belly, our stomachs fast, but our eyes are not fasting. Our ears are not fasting. Our tongues are not fasting. So how do you expect to not be or have desires while you're still looking? Nothing's changed. All you're doing is stopping food.
Yeah, that's right.
That's not the aim. I mean, that's one of the aims. It's meant to sort of minimize your energy levels a little bit. But that's not the entire aim of Siyam. Siyam also is to, you know, watch, yani fast in the sense that control what you see and control what you hear and control what, you know, who you talk to and stuff like that. So you can't fast while you're still talking to the chick
Yeah.
and say, man, fasting's not working. You can't do that. You've got to fast from all these components and elements and stuff,
Yeah.
right? And if you are, back to the belly part, if you're eating biryani and a whole lamb in suhoor, and then shawi and laham and kifta and that barbecue on iftar, of course it's not going to do, you know, it's not going to, the benefits of fasting or what this prophetic advice is meant to deliver, the objective is not going to be met, right? So fast as much as you could, wait it out, prepare yourself, save some money, right? Get your stand on your feet, know what career you want to pursue, have all that down pat, and then go searching.
Inshallah ta'ala. No, that's really good advice. And yeah, and like with Siyam, with everything, it's about sincerity as well.
Yes.
I find, from personal experience, we're fasting, we're only thinking about the next meal. We're actually not thinking about the present. Like, and that's why we used to hear at school, Wallah sir, my productivity is very bad in Ramadan. It's because the only thing we're thinking about is our iftar. We don't actually live the Siyam, subhanAllah.
That's so true.
Alhamdulillah. With that, inshallah, we'll probably, it's a good time to take some questions, inshallah. So this is now open forum for the shabab. If anyone has any questions,
تفضلوا شباب.
specific, general, whatever you like about the topic, not about the topic.
No judgment as well.
Oh, sorry, let me rephrase. About what we spoke about and something that we haven't spoken about, but stick to the topic, inshallah. Yalla, tfaddal, Abdul Hamid.
Just first question with regards to the social media aspect we spoke about towards the beginning of the podcast. Would you say the role of the male and the female with regards to social media, as in most of them spending time, look at me and look how we're in love and whatnot, and that romantic element, you might call it, would you say that the problem also is because they themselves are trying to vindicate to themselves, oh, look at us, we are happy? Would you say that's the case also?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the motives, I would believe. They're trying to say, look at us, we're happy. So spending time on social media, it's not just the photos and that. That's one aspect. The other aspect I was talking about is just spending time on the phone in general. Could be on WhatsApp, could be on whatever.
It's very distracting.
Yeah, it's very, very distracting. But what you're talking about, the photos and showing the glamorous lifestyle that you have, or showing the world how amazing your marriage is, yeah, definitely they want to do that to tell themselves that, and they want to sort of lie to themselves that this is how our marriage really is. But those who are close to them would see otherwise.
And another question, just a personal question for you. What would you tell yourself or younger self at the age of 18, 19, in specifically, not with regards to us, but yourself?
Well, when I was 18, you know, I guess I was transitioning, you know what I'm saying? That was just when I lost my younger brother, that sort of around that age. Allah yarhamu. So, I mean, I transitioned. So, I look at everything as you need to go through those trials in order to be where you are. But if there's something I can go back and redo, I would probably focus more on my studies more at that age. I mean, I was doing an apprenticeship, so I was studying, but you know, yeah, I think after 18, I let go of the Islamic studies. Well, I didn't know what Islamic studies was, right? So if I was 18 again, I'll tell the 18-year-old me to actually, you know, go and learn Islam, study Islam, you know, attend the masajid, because I wasn't doing that at that age.
And just a third question. This has somewhat, since we're talking about mental health with regards to marriage, would you say a majority of the issues today in the Lebanese society, not just the Lebanese community, but other communities which involve
Muslims?
Muslim youth,
Yep.
would you say that mental health is directly connected to all these drugs and whatnot, that they themselves don't come out and say, look, I'm suffering and what, so they turn to that? It's not necessarily that they don't have the
Yeah.
It's the fact that they're too macho to kind of say, oh, look at me, I'm suffering. Or go seek help. Would you attribute that to that?
So your first part of the question is addiction. Is it related? Is there a connection with mental health issues? Is that right?
In specific, yes. Can we attribute that?
Can we attribute addiction with mental health?
That people turn to addiction
Because
they don't want to admit that they have some type of mental health.
okay, so
Because they're too macho and too arrogant.
that's a very important question.
Yes.
So a lot of addictions. One of the main reasons why people turn to addictions is because of some mental illness, okay, or trauma, right? More specifically, trauma. I wouldn't call them macho. You know, it's a struggle. It is a struggle.
Arrogance.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Arrogance, not just
It could look like arrogance. It could look like arrogance, but there's a lot of demons these guys have to have to fight just to come and see a counselor. So I don't want to put them down by saying that word, but I know it can look like arrogance, but it's not that they don't want to get help.
So would you suggest to the youth that if they feel like they're uncomfortable or not happy with where they are, to seek help? And
Yes, definitely
not
seek help.
just put it aside and say, oh, let me do this and do that.
Yeah, most cases you can't overcome it yourself. You will need professional intervention. But yeah, addiction is usually a way to escape from, you can say, the trauma that they've had in their life. You know, so that's what happens. So really, you know, I know when we see what we call, someone who's on drugs, or we straight away judge them, and we think, oh, he just has a choice. Yeah, I mean, they do have choices. Don't get me wrong, but we don't understand what they've been through in order for them to be where they are right now. And just having that empathy and that understanding, and you establish that with them, that's actually, as some specialists say, they say that the antidote or the cure to addiction is actually connection and love. And it actually, because the reason why they're addicted is because they didn't receive love from their family. That's what they say.
Yeah.
Subhanallah.
So essentially seek help if you want.
Yeah, definitely seek help if you are addicted. You can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely seek professional help.
And addiction, like, it doesn't have to be really on the extreme end as well. It could be like in modern society, addiction can mean a lot of things. I know, for example, on my phone there's an application on settings. It tells you it gives you the statistics about your screen time.
Uh-huh.
There's a part of the statistics that tells us how many times we pick up our phone.
Yeah.
during the day.
Wow.
So I
That's
thought, yeah, I thought to myself, like I was having a look one day. I think, يعني in the past maybe a couple of years, I had it. There was a day I picked it up. It said maybe 65 pickups. يعني pick up your phone 65 times. I thought to myself, did I have 65 important things to do today on my phone? And if you think about it, you probably had 3 or 4.
It gets you to reflect at least.
يعني like and يعني addiction is really, it's actually beyond
It's
the
beyond
drugs
the drugs
and
and that,
alcohol. Like these days, يعني anything can turn into addiction.
Yeah.
يعني it could be as simple. This isn't haram. Don't take it like literally, but it could be as simple as excessive gaming, excessive shows.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, like none of it's haram, but
فتحت باب. Can I talk
That's
about
right.
excessive gaming?
yeah, تفضل.
That's another problem I get told. Grown-ass men, am I allowed to say that here? Yes, I am. Addicted to games, and I'm talking all night.
With his friends like Mike and everything.
Yeah, Mike and everything, right? If they work, it's straight after work until right before Fajr time or after Fajr time, right? Sleeps on the couch and goes to work again. If it doesn't work, it's unlimited. It is an addiction as well, right? It can be an addiction, gaming addictions.
Yes.
And I've seen grown men addicted to it, right? And also, what I see with women, when they're addicted, it's cleaning.
Oh, subhanallah.
Extreme cleaning. All addictions have one thing in common. Whether it's gaming for the men or cleaning for the women or gym, working out, whatever, or drugs or pornography, all of them have one thing in common: escapism. You're trying to escape reality and the pain and sitting with yourself. Wallahi, I tell some clients, let's just sit here for 5 minutes. Just silence. They can't even pass a minute without shaking and crying. They've never done it before because they can't sit with their feelings and their thoughts. It's terrifying.
SubhanAllah.
So they keep busy. Phones, this, that, you know?
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. So, just to let you know, we've set up something called Slider. It's called Slider, which you can see up there. There's a QR code. What the shabab can do is they can actually scan their phones and they can ask us a question and it stays anonymous.
Oh, wow.
So they've sent through some questions and we'll try and get through as much as we can. Riyad and Asif can let us know when our time's over, but we'll try and get through as many as we can, inshallah. We'll start with this one. We spoke about how important family is when it comes to marrying someone. How does a divorced family impact that notion? And يعني, I assume they're trying to talk about impact your decision making in terms of marrying someone. How does if the family is divorced, what impact does it have on your perception and what you see?
Okay, so divorce is something that is legislated in the Sharia. So it has its time and place and it's needed, right? As opposed to looking at divorce as all doom and gloom, you know? So divorce has its place and it has its needs and, you know, there's times where you need to resort to that, right? So obviously every family is different. Some people yani have broken homes. That's the term that they use. Some people have broken homes in the absence of divorce. So the home's broken, but the parents are still married, right? And there's some people who are divorced who don't have broken homes. Wallahi, right? So it's a case-by-case situation. Obviously, divorce, it's not something that we parade and say, yeah, just get divorced, everything's sweet. You know, we don't do that, but in some cases, you know, it is required, isn't it? So if the marriage was so bad that, you know, you didn't want to come home, and wallahi, I hear youth tell me all the time, I don't even want to go home, brother. I sit outside in my car for 2-3 hours, I wait till my parents sleep, and then I come up. I just don't want to hear it, man. That's what they tell me. They don't want to come home. Or when their dad comes, they pretend they're asleep. They don't want to hear it from him. His all is negativity. Where's this? Where's that? Do this. Where's that? Why is this clear? Did you pray? All day commands, right? They don't want to hear it. So you know what? I'm just going to avoid this block. So when they get divorced, especially if there's abuse and so forth, they say, Alhamdulillah.
It's rahmah sometimes.
Yeah, it's rahmah.
Yeah.
You know, thanks Allah for this rahmah here, right? So it depends on the situation. I don't know. You know, to answer that question, you know, if you're going to marry a sister and her parents are divorced, I've seen amazing sisters from divorced families, and you know, as long as she's dealing with her issues, you know, working on herself, she can work through it. It's not the end of the world if your parents are divorced.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. No, that sums it up. There's a question here about whether arranged marriages are halal or haram. I think you answered it pretty clearly. Like the sunnah, يعني basically just in the sunnah we find that.
You should see your wife and you should give consent, and both need to have consent.
Yeah, that's right.
If that's there, do arrange, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, خلاص. Just to simplify it, instead of getting into the proper halal haram question. What is a trait that you see is lacking in the youth nowadays? When you see married couples, what's a trait that you find that's lacking in their character? And this basically that they could have fixed when they were in their youth stages, their 16s, 17s, 18s, even 15s, 14s.
So you're talking about married shabab?
Yeah, like married people, what trait were they missing when they were younger? That they could have worked on and it could have had a better impact on their marriage.
The answer is one. I mean, I can mention a few, but there's this one that always stands out in therapy. Defensiveness. Not taking responsibility. Not taking blame for what you've done. Reversing the blame. Playing the victim. It's never your fault. It's always someone else's fault. Defensiveness. That is a killer of marriage, man. It's one of the most common traits. I mean, we're all defensive to some level, right?
That's right. If you're accused,
we're all defensive. But there's a difference between the impulsiveness, the counterattack, the reversing the blame, and so on and so forth. So defensiveness really is saying, I am not the problem, you are the problem. Defensiveness is saying, I see a perceived attack. What I see is a perceived attack on my ego. And that's why it's so dangerous. Defensiveness is what the defensive person sees, a perceived attack on his ego. So then he becomes very defensive, right? And when you're defensive in marriage, it means you're not empathetic. It means you're impulsive. It means you're reversing the blame. It means you're not taking responsibility. And all those are ingredients for disaster, right? I need 2-3 sessions just to teach a man how to take some responsibility. And he's so impulsive to be defensive, and I have to stop it.
Yeah, he can't even take advice.
But once we establish a relationship, he trusts me.
Yeah.
Even then, and he tries his best, the defensiveness still tries to creep in. I still need to stop it.
So even that's an addiction. If we're talking about...
I wouldn't call it an addiction, but it's just impulsive.
Yeah.
It's like a knee-jerk reaction. Because why? The ego perceives it's under attack. Yes. So he goes into fight and flight mode. You with me, boys? Defensiveness. Work on this trait. How do you work on it? Can I give some quick points?
Yes.
This is how you work on defensiveness. First, self-awareness. Look at when you're becoming defensive, what happens in your body. Do you feel a rush, a gush? Does your heart rate increase? Does your breath decrease? Do you start shallow breathing? What happens with your body when you become defensive? You need to pay attention to that first. Then, you need to ask yourself, what am I defensive about, really? Right? And then learn how to self-regulate that. Start breathing correctly. If you can't interact because it's you're too escalated, right? Call a timeout. And there's rules to calling a timeout as well. You've got to say, look, I'm feeling flooded, feeling triggered and defensive. I don't want to say something to hurt you because I value our marriage. I need a 30-minute break. It's important to add a time here because some couples are very anxiously attached. They can't, if you stonewall them or give them a silent treatment, that's punishment for them.
You think that you're running away.
Is he running away? Where's he going? Does he hate me? Is he leaving? Is he cheating? Their mind goes to Mars and back. Don't do that. I'll be back in 30 minutes.
Yes.
You go, you breathe, you salli al nabi, you make wudu.
Visit your parents maybe, something.
You do something, relax, and then you come back and round two, So defensiveness, control your defensiveness.
Yes, that's very good advice actually. It's an umbrella solution, inshallah. There's a good question here. We spoke about how sometimes you have a case where it's too late. They're coming to seek counselling, it's too late, the damage has been done. What would be a recommended time in the marriage or a light bulb moment, an indicator?
I love that question.
For when to start seeking counselling?
All right, so who here owns a car? All right. So, do you have a go-to mechanic?
Yes.
So, just like you have a car, and you have your go-to mechanic who does your rego, your pink slip, he does your services. If there's an issue, you can call him. He can pick up the car, whatever. You know, he helps you out. He knows your car. He knows your needs. He knows what time you work. He knows you, right? And you've got to service your car in order to keep your car running. Right? So we've got to look at marriage as somewhat like this. I believe that, I know this is far-fetched, I haven't seen it. I mean, I do see a few people doing it, but not a lot of people do this. Seek marriage counseling as a marriage checkup, tune-up service. You know, once a year, twice a year.
Oh, subhanAllah. That often?
Yeah. You get to, I get couples all the time. They come, they're very healthy couples. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no issues. Very emotionally intelligent, very mature, you know, all this stuff. But they come in because, and they're way more educated than me. But they love to come in my office because it's their safe space to unhash a few things. You know what I mean? And they walk out stronger.
It's almost like a checkup. You do a blood test.
That's what it is.
At a doctor's.
That's what it is. It's like a relationship checkup, right? So to answer your question, have a therapist that you both know, husband and wife, and they become your go-to when you have some issues, disagreements. Of course, you can have a sheikh as well for that. But obviously, my sheikh deal with like other issues in like halal, haram. If you want actual, you know, solutions and therapy, then have a therapist or a counselor who is your go-to for your relationship, and go there once a year, right?
Yes.
Even if there's nothing wrong, schedule it in just like you schedule in your vacation and your holiday, you know, or your car service.
Yeah, that's good. That's a very good analogy. Keep that in mind, Shabab. There's a question here. I'm going to give you the opportunity if you like to just quickly add something about it, but we've been speaking about it for weeks. It's when you're ready for marriage, what are the next steps in order to find the right person? Do you have any, you know, just quick points to share?
So what to look for in a spouse? Is that what the question is, or not?
It's more, the question's asking about the next steps.
The next step when you're ready. Okay.
Yeah, like when you're ready for marriage, what are the next steps?
Okay.
This question comes every second week, subhanAllah. Sometimes I wonder if they're listening.
All right, the next step is speak to your parents.
Yes.
Speak to your parents, consult with them, and tell them I am ready for marriage. Now, depending on the family dynamics,
Yeah, that's right.
some parents talk about sex with their children and it's okay, or marriage and stuff, you know, puberty, all that type of stuff. To some parents who haven't spoken about this, and a lot of us haven't, parents don't talk about this. And so when the kid comes and says, I'm ready for marriage, they're like, you haven't even, as I say in Arabic, hatched out of the egg. You know, so I'm not saying that you're always going to get a good response, but let your parents know. It might be hard on them the first time, but repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. It'll become something that they'll accept in time. That's the first step after that, and then you can go searching, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah, that's fine. Yani it's the question that is always asked, yani, and they always get the same answer, you know.
Yeah.
A couple more. This brother's asking that about someone who's ready for marriage.
A girl?
And, no, like the person himself.
Okay,
He's ready for marriage and dedicated to marriage, but doesn't have the financial capabilities yet. Should he go in, yani, basically without the financial capability and al-barakah, or is
Okay,
it,
so
yani,
the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, يا معشر الشباب من استطاع منكم الباء فليتزوج. General rule. So Allah's Prophet is saying, O youth, O young men, whoever has the ability to get married, then get married, right? So istita'a has different elements. Now the first one is financial element. So this is how it's translated in the English, by the way. Financial ability. So the scholars said marriage has different rulings. It can be wajib, obligatory. It can be just mustahab and recommended. It could be just neutral, whatever. It could be makruh and it could be haram. How does this happen? They look at a few things. If the man has the physical ability, yani his private parts are working, and he is fit and healthy, and he has the financial ability to open a house and spend on the wife and feed her, clothe her, and the rest of it, and he's emotionally stable as well. He's not someone who you just poke him and he blows up, right? So when these are all there, they say if his desires are very high, then it's wajib for him to get married. And what does wajib mean? Doesn't mean he has to go down the road and say, listen man, it's wajib, if I don't marry you now, I'm sinning. So he just marries anyone. No, at least you're pursuing it.
Yeah,
it's a priority. It prioritizes Hajj even.
SubhanAllah.
You see? That's what we mean by wajib. Doesn't mean the other thing. I'll go to the other extreme. It can become haram when you're not financially able to meet your wife's rights. So the wife has a right that you clothe her, feed her, and house her, pay the rent, whatever, all the bills. That's her right. And if you can't do that, then it can be haram. If you do that, you're going to fall into oppressing someone. You see? So you're harming another human. Now, if you can't afford it, and look, I see a lot of young shabab who are 18, 19, 20, who they can't fully afford it, but they can afford something.
Basic.
The
bare minimum.
The bare minimum, right? They might need some support from their parents. They might need some support. And this is okay. You can marry like that.
Yeah.
So you can, if your parents are willing to help you financially, like give you like some lump sum, whatever, help you buy furniture or something like that. Or maybe even, in some circumstances, they have a granny flat as a temporary accommodation until the man is ready to leave. Then there are some options, Yeah. So, but if you're not financially ready, like you got nothing, you're like absolutely on zero, and you haven't worked a day in your life, and you haven't ever had a responsibility of waking up and going to work, and knowing what it is to be a man and to fulfill that responsibility of going to work, don't get married.
Even knowing what it is to have money, to spend, to
have
save.
It and spend, it's very important.
Yeah, that's right.
Very, very important.
Alhamdulillah. With that, inshallah, it's time to wrap up, inshallah. Thank you
Okay.
very much for your time, akhi. All right, with that, inshallah, I think the shabab are satisfied. Ready for marriage? No, I'm joking.
Who's ready for marriage, shabab? Yallah.
How old are you? It's like 14.
Yeah, he's ready. He put his hand up twice.
لا إله إلا الله. Alhamdulillah. جزاكم الله خيرا.
وإياكم. I loved being here. I mean, obviously MIA is my home, but seeing new faces like this is, I believe it is, like I said in the start,
Yes.
it's hope for the ummah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
This is hope for the ummah. Wallahi, it is. Keep it up, shabab.
Alhamdulillah. And we're happy to have you here to wrap up our theme of love, desires, and marriage. And we thank you for your patience with the shabab and your, alhamdulillah, your expertise.
Alhamdulillah. If you have any questions for later on, come and see me. I'll be here till Isha.
Inshallah.
And yeah.
جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.